It feels like you can get your credit scores anywhere these days. Random websites, card statements, budgeting apps, heck, even your dog might bark out a few numbers. It's true. Credit Karma isn't the only place you can find them. But we actually do more with your scores to help you find your next financial opportunity. Like a more rewarding credit card, a game plan that helps you pay down debt faster, or a personal loan to help you save more on interest payments each month. Cha-ching! The possibilities are kinda endless. Download Intuit Credit Karma today to get started.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. The holidays are here, and you know what that means. It's time to get your friends and family the gifts they deserve. Take the stress out of shopping with Amazon's great deals and low prices on a huge range of items from toys to tech and much more. Whoever you're gifting for, Amazon has great prices on everything you need this holiday season. Shop early holiday deals now.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Dr. Psych Mom Show. So today I'm going to talk a little about what highly sensitive is and isn't, because I see that it gets misused a lot. And I got this idea from my secret Facebook group. And so, as always, if you would like more interaction and more discussion of these topics, join my secret Facebook group. It's the blue subscribe button on my Facebook page, $4.99 a month, so about as cheap as you can get. So sometimes people think that highly sensitive means the colloquial definition of sensitive, like easily hurt, like their feelings get hurt a lot, like you got to walk on eggshells around them. That is not what highly sensitive means, okay? So highly sensitive means, you know what? I'm just going to tell you what it means, literally according to the quiz. So what you're going to do right now, if you can, is you're going to tally off how many of these apply to you. Okay, or to your partner that you think is highly sensitive. And you'll be very surprised if you've never done this before at what highly sensitive really means. So just check yes or no. I am easily overwhelmed by strong sensory input. I seem to be aware of subtleties in my environment. These are all yes, no. Other people's moods affect me. I tend to be very sensitive to pain. I find myself needing to withdraw during busy days into bed or a darkened room or any place where I could have some privacy and relief from stimulation. I am particularly sensitive to the effects of caffeine. I am easily overwhelmed by things like bright lights, strong smells, coarse fabrics, or sirens close by. I have a rich, complex inner life. I am made uncomfortable by loud noises. I am deeply moved by the arts or music. My nervous system sometimes feels so frazzled that I just have to go off by myself. I am conscientious. I startle easily. I get rattled when I have a lot to do in a short amount of time. When people are uncomfortable in a physical environment, I tend to know what needs to be done to make it more comfortable, like changing the lighting or the seating. I am annoyed when people try to get me to do too many things at once. I try hard to avoid making mistakes or forgetting things. I make a point to avoid violent movies and TV shows. I become unpleasantly aroused when a lot is going on around me. Being very hungry creates a strong reaction in me, disrupting my concentration or mood. Changes in my life shake me up. I notice and enjoy delicate or fine scents, tastes, sounds, works of art. I find it unpleasant to have a lot going on at once. I make it a high priority to arrange my life to avoid upsetting or overwhelming situations. I am bothered by intense stimuli like loud noises or chaotic scenes. When I must compete or be observed while performing a task, I become so nervous or shaky that I do much worse than I would otherwise. And last, when I was a child, my parents or teachers seemed to see me as sensitive or shy. Then if you get more than 14 of those, you're considered highly sensitive. Now, that may have been very, very different from what you thought the questions would be. There are none about people have to walk on eggshells around me. I explode if people don't do things exactly my way. I burst into tears at the slightest provocation. None of that. It doesn't have to do with that. That's more rejection sensitive, and I'll talk about that in a bit. Highly sensitive is just like you have more nerve endings. You observe more things. You're a deeper thinker and a deeper feeler. All artists are highly sensitive. All musicians are highly sensitive. I mean, that just is what it is. You see things in a more complex and deep way, and it's harder for you to deal with stimulation of any sort, right? And in fact, a lot of highly sensitive people it has nothing to do with attachment style. And a lot of highly sensitive people are mistaken for not the preoccupied, avoidant because they want to go off by themselves a lot. because they want to recharge, and so you may think that your preoccupied wife who's always getting her feelings hurt that's because she's highly sensitive, but that's not highly sensitive. Highly sensitive wants low conflict. Conflict is too stimulating. So they don't want to have a lot of conflict. Of course, you can be highly sensitive and have other things going on, unresolved trauma. You could be somebody who has borderline personality disorder or ADHD or depression or anything and also be highly sensitive. But highly sensitive itself is a trait. It affects about 20% of people. It's genetic. So if you're highly sensitive, you probably have a highly sensitive child. And it doesn't have anything to do with people having to walk on eggshells around you, which is a common misconception that I see all over in my office, in my group, on the internet. Now, rejection sensitivity or rejection sensitive dysphoria, that comes along with depression. So that's a big one. When women especially get depressed and have atypical depression, which I've discussed over and over, is not atypical, it's just the one that women have. You're more sensitive to rejection. When you have borderline personality disorder, you're sensitive to rejection. When you have ADHD, that goes along with rejection sensitivity. Rejection sensitivity are the people that you're always having to kind of pick your words so that they don't get their feelings hurt. That's not a highly sensitive person. So I have a post on my site, highly sensitive mom is mean to me. And a woman who wrote in years ago, a young woman said that her mother, who's highly sensitive, basically makes her walk on eggshells, is always getting her feelings hurt, and is really nasty to the girl. And she thought this is because she's a highly sensitive person, and it's not. That's something else. Seem more like a personality disorder issue in that post. But the point is, a highly sensitive person is somebody who just feels things deeply. So yeah, they will get more hurt if you are actually mean to them. But that does not mean that they view things through a lens where you're always mean. That's a different sort of thing. So walking on eggshells, if you feel like you are walking on eggshells in your marriage, that's most likely because you married somebody that was like a parent that you had to walk on eggshells around. It does not mean anything about them being highly sensitive. So if you want, you can get them into couples counseling by saying, I want to deal with you being a highly sensitive person. If that's like the only way you could get them in, then that's a white lie, and which you believed until this very moment, in service of getting them in. But then once they're in, describe what's really going on. And there's no therapist in the world that's going to be like, oh yeah, just a highly sensitive person. That's the genetic trait, is that like they always think you're an asshole. That isn't what that is. So if your child is highly sensitive, there's a whole highly sensitive child test, which has a lot of overlap with the adult test. It's very interesting. All this research, by the way, is done by Elaine Aron, Aron, and there's lots of great books. There's even The Highly Sensitive Person in Love, which if you read it, like this woman, Elaine Aron herself, is a highly sensitive person. And she has like a bi-coastal marriage with her husband, who's another psychology researcher. I believe she discussed that in the book, if I'm not wrong. That's because she doesn't like to be overstimulated, literally by him, or even by being in the same room as somebody all the time. So it just means that you feel stimulation more readily of all sorts, emotional, physical, anything. So a highly sensitive person will be more distressed or thrown off schedule by missing sleep, or by being hungry, or by taking their meds at the wrong time of day. Or these are the people that experience a lot of side effects from medications. I can feel, exactly when the medication kicks in. It's like the princess and the pea, like somebody who feels things that other people don't usually feel. But that does not mean that they are always up your ass saying that you hurt their feelings. That causes conflict. And that's not a highly sensitive person thing. Now, if you are in the situation where you're walking on eggshells, you have to, as always, go back to your family of origin. If you married somebody that makes you walk on eggshells, not that they make you, you collude in that, you walk on the eggshells, this is almost always, I have to say almost, I guess, but it's always because you grew up with that, And so that felt familiar to you. So even at the beginning, when you were having a lot of sex and being romantic and whatever, they would still get their feelings hurt all the time, and you had to make up with them. And that made sense to you from how you were raised, because you were always dancing around trying not to hurt a parent's feelings. And the parent was, again, possibly a highly sensitive person, possibly not, completely orthogonal with the fact that they were rejection sensitive and or dramatic and difficult in whatever way, for whatever reason they were. Usually because their parent was, and back for millennia, right? So the point being do not and then the worst thing that happens is that then the parent sees that a child is sensitive and they're like, oh my God, they're going to turn into somebody so difficult and dramatic like my spouse. So I got to basically make sure that I toughen them up and that I don't let them be sensitive. No, a sensitive kid is always going to be a sensitive person. Certainly, you don't have to bubble wrap them. And as I always say, you got to expose your children to various things in a casual and laid back way. Don't create any fears, etc., which is hard for people who struggle with anxiety. But do not try to get their sensitivity out of them, because it's a trait. It's always going to be there. And it has many, many positives. As I said, people are creative, observant, writers, musicians, artists, therapists. All these people are people who observe a lot about the world and think about it deeply and then can process it in ways that other people may not. They see like a lot of different levels to things. And that's a really, really positive trait, and it counters all the negative traits of being the one who, needs a lot of sleep or needs to be on their schedule and what have you. But do not conflate anger issues or emotional volatility with high sensitivity and therefore feel that your child is going to turn into some kind of an asshole because they're highly sensitive, because they're not. If your partner is acting like an asshole, it's not because they're highly sensitive. It's because you and your partner are in a dynamic where you enable them and walk on eggshells around them. You're probably, have a lot of the same upbringing as them. Both of you saw parents trapped in this dynamic where one was always trying to walk on eggshells around the other one and make everything better for them. And then the other one was difficult and dramatic. Doesn't matter what the gender was. And then you and your partner got sucked into this cycle yourselves. Couples counseling can really help, because then somebody is seeing what's actually going on and you're not kind of self-diagnosing. And the most common self-diagnosis is, my wife is highly sensitive and I'm just a really good guy. Or your wife has traits of borderline personality disorder and you are a classic enabler, 6 of 1. And the point being is, if you are deluded in thinking that this high sensitivity that's an unchangeable trait is the reason that your kids are looking at a dynamic where one person walks on eggshells all the time around another and tiptoes around and over functions and does everything in the house while the other person just cries or criticizes them, that is not normal. That has nothing to do with sensitivity. That is a dynamic that is dysfunctional that you learn and that you're replicating. So hopefully this was interesting to you. I urge you to go back to the beginning and see how many highly sensitive traits you have or your spouse. Your supposedly highly sensitive spouse may not really have many of the traits, certainly not 14. And by the way, real highly sensitive people, I get like all of them, or I did for the child one. I haven't taken this one in a while. But for the kid one, the highly sensitive child test, as a kid, I had like 22 out of 22 or whatever it is. So there's a huge range even within the highly sensitive bracket. But if the problem is that the person is difficult, that is not what highly sensitive is. Highly sensitive is frequently a very quiet, conflict-averse person. And so you got to know what you're dealing with in order to treat it. And the way to treat this dynamic of one person kowtowing, terrified to another person who's never happy, and believe me, that person truly is never happy. It's not like they are so happy that you're enabling and kowtowing and walking on eggshells. They're still not happy, because whatever's making them so unhappy, usually unresolved childhood trauma or depression, is not being treated. So this can be your wake-up call to get into therapy ASAP. And I'll talk to y'all soon. I hope that you enjoyed this and found it useful. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.